Hi, my name is Gandhi, and I am a psychiatrist of South Asian descent working with the American Psychiatric Association to highlight the struggles of minorities in mental health. As a psychiatrist, I work with those who struggle with mental illness and have witnessed and worked with people suffering from the significant pains of depression and anxiety. Unfortunately, people within South Asian communities often stigmatize the potential benefit of mental health services, often to the detriment of the individuals who are suffering. Sitting down with me today is someone who has dealt with mental health and anxiety themselves. I want to welcome Geetsikha.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for sitting down with me to talk a little bit about your experience and about your experience within your community. I wanted to start just by asking you a little bit about what has been your personal experience with anxiety and how have you dealt with that?
I was going into a new university, new environment, so I wanted to try different things and involving myself in a lot of different, basically stretching myself too thin. And that's kind of when I started getting more anxiety because my parents have always been there for me, and they're being immigrants themselves. They sacrificed a lot by coming here. So in my head at the time, I thought that, reaching out to them would be like a show of weakness, not by anything that they've said or done, but rather what I had seen happen to other people in the community. And because I didn't want to give them, that pain of like, she's struggling with X, Y, and Z, maybe it's our fault, maybe we didn't raise her to be like strong enough. I didn't want to have them feel hurt, so I kind of kept it all in, and obviously that builds and builds, and then I started developing like the anxiety issues, but it's been obviously good now because I was able to reach out to them as I like growed and matured and started to do well in my community and job. But that happened after I got involved with mental health organizations.
And thank you for being here and sharing that with us.
Yeah, of course.
You mentioned that getting the support of your family was like an incredibly important step for you. Mm-hmm. And you also mentioned that the community at large often has a difficult time with understanding what that means, what a mental health issue might be, or what anxiety is.
Sure.
How did you go about explaining what you were experiencing to your family and to your friends and to your larger community?
Right. So when I have talked to people in the community, a lot of them share the same story of, yeah, I tried reaching out, but for the most part, people are always like, buck up, we're immigrants, we gave you so much, we dealt with so much in India or, wherever South Asian country they came from, you have it good here. And I kind of noticed that more and more people were getting dismissed. So this was before I'd reached out to my own parents, but I was trying to like get insight from like other people that had like shared their story to kind of best figure out what angle to approach it from, because it was kind of scary for me because I was like, I don't want them to think that they haven't done their best, right? I kind of got data from that and was able to frame it to my parents in a way that like, look, you guys have done X, Y, and Z for me, but here's where it fell short, not at any fault to you. And I think that's the most important thing, is when you talk to your parents about it or talk to your loved ones about it, make sure they know that it's at no fault to them, but rather like circumstantial or just something that didn't match up, so that way they can figure out how to like bridge that gap. And I felt like that was the most important thing, at least in my personal story. So at first, my parents did say that, you have it good. Like immediately they were trying to remind me of like, this is where everything's good is going on in your life, right? But anxiety is such a thing where it's like, even when things are going good, it's always present. It's always making you feel like, you're not adequate, or having you experience like life in a different bubble, so to speak. So when I explained that to them, like, yes, I know I'm doing good here, but what if? So it was a lot of, and they do this in therapy too, but my parents helped me kind of reframe things. And I think one of the major things was that when I shared my story with them and shared like what situations I get anxious in or why I get so frustrated with certain issues, they started opening up about, their own experiences. We go through our lives like picturing our parents as like these perfect individuals, a lot of us within the South Asian culture, that they make no mistakes. And anytime we make a mistake, it's a kind of a disappointment. Not because of anything they say, but just we want to show them that we're capable. So seeing them in a more human light really helped, and I think that's where the whole storytelling and sharing experiences comes in. Yeah.
So you mentioned like gathering the support of your parents was like a really important aspect of your own recovery. And so when you talk about gathering that support, you mentioned a few things that made gathering their support more difficult than it might be for a person who's not of South Asian descent,
Right.
Including the fear that like your parents would blame themselves, as well as concerns that maybe they wouldn't understand.
I guess the concerns too are like social and cultural concerns. We go through our lives not really seeing representation from the South Asian community in services like mental health and things. So it's almost like we're kept out of the conversation. And I'll say, for example, when I was dealing with anxiety in like undergrad, I had called the school support line to ask them for advice. And they were giving me answers that were very like, as a matter of fact, like, oh, why don't you just do this? Why don't you just do that? And to me, those answers were void of any social context that would have been helpful for me in navigating my own issues. So like the social and cultural aspects are important, I feel. When our parents, immigrate here, they're dealing with so much on their own, like moving to a new country and dealing with the customs and stuff. Mental health and, the talking about it and things like that almost takes a back seat because there are so many more tangible issues that they have to deal with that they almost have to like shut it off. So I think with my parents, it wasn't so much of a, we don't want to talk about it because it's not important, because it is, but there were so many other things that, we also had to overcome as an immigrant family that it was just, if we take the time to deal with this, then we'll go soft on the other stuff. So, like people have said, creating an environment is helpful, acknowledging that, it's all connected. If like mental health and anxiety and the support system isn't there, then it starts affecting other tangible things like grades and, college success and things like that. So I feel like making that connection for a lot of people in the South Asian community is important, because a lot of people think that it's just like something that takes a back seat or isn't really important in talks with other people I've found. So just reminding them that it's all connected is important.
Yeah. So the idea of tying mental health into the other social issues in the context in which we exist was a really important aspect of getting your parents' support and getting them to better understand what your experience was.
Yeah, exactly.
In regards to when you think about, so that one of the ways that you sought help was through the support of your parents, what are the different ways in which like you did seek help? You mentioned the mental health organizations, but what are some of the ways that you sought help for your own anxiety? And what are ways that you might seek help in the future?
Before I reached out to my parents, I had actually reached out to a couple of Indian friends and asked them like how they talk to their parents about this kind of stuff. And so when they helped me like frame, this is how you should approach it, and your parents are coming at it from this angle, so you should be mindful of that, that really helped. Just again, it all kind of comes back to connecting to something that has like a social, cultural context, because without that, people can't speak to the things that maybe you can't really verbalize. So by talking to someone with like similar experiences, it's helpful because they're already coming into the conversation with the context that you have, hopefully. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So support within the community is really important. What are other ways that that we could help support people that are struggling with mental health issues of South Asian descent?
Right. So I feel like interconnectivity between communities is also important. I feel like when you're a South Asian individual struggling with mental health and you seek out resources, like the visibility is definitely important. So not just like having South Asian professionals, but making sure they're visible in like mainstream conversations and making the connections there. Like if there's a mental health conference going on, like making sure that there's representation, actively making sure there's representation and pushing South Asian professionals to like kind of not just stay within like, hey, there's a South Asian conference going on, you should be at that. But no, you should be at like the mainstream like mental health conferences that are for everyone. You should be there too. So I think that would help. And then also just talking, I know this is cliche, but like, talking about your issues with organizations like Man Mukti, which is like a community platform for your issues to be shared is important, because it's like the more you talk about it, the more you might find someone that went through something similar, but like overcame it, so you can talk to them about. Of course, everyone's journey is different, but you can always use like lessons learned. And also, the most importantly, it's like you're not alone, so you don't have to feel like you're dealing with it by yourself.
Yeah.
So.
We keep coming back to like the uniqueness of South Asian identity. From your perspective and from your experience, what aspect of like your South Asian identity impeded you the most, or kept you from being able to disclose to your parents and to other people in your community?
Right, so not only just for myself, but I've seen with other people too, the fact that we're seen as a model minority, we're expected to succeed, which is a good thing because it pushes us, but also in the other way, like, it almost seems, until I opened up to my parents about it and they opened up to me about what they went through, it's seen as we're not allowed to be vulnerable. If you're vulnerable, or if you're seen as weak, or you're struggling with something, then immediately you're like, some people might label you as like a failure, someone whose successes are like invalidated because they're dealing with something. I think that's the biggest thing, because I'm seen as a role model in my community, but like if I say that like I'm anxious or something, someone might say like, oh, everyone gets anxious, or everyone has like test anxiety. That's not a big deal, because anxiety is such like almost an invisible issue that you don't really know what's going through someone's head when they're dealing with stressful situations. So yeah, not being able to be seen as weak is a problem, because it's like, and also labeling it as weakness, like the way we talk about mental health at Manmukti is that it's something that you deal with, and it's always going to be with you. You just have to know how to manage it and kind of progress out, past it. I think that's important too, because seeing it as a weakness or something that is this issue or this negative thing in your life is also bad. It's just something, it's like a personality flaw. You have to deal with it. You have to kind of incorporate it in your life the best way you can to like be strong in spite of it. So
you mentioned like the invisibility in particular as something that's problematic, as well as like the fact that it's kind of seen as like a weakness.
With a lot of South Asian film and cultural representations, like mental health is almost seen as like, it's made fun of, it's like caricatured in like a lot of Bollywood films and things like that. So when people talk about mental health in a serious like mindset, the people receiving it might like laugh it off or immediately assume the worst. What people don't understand is that it's a spectrum, right? You might not be, the clinical definition to be diagnosed with anxiety is that it has to be something that's going on for like 6 months, right? But they don't account for, I think, the spectrum, and like in that moment, someone might need help and they're facing a lot like acute anxiety or something. So I feel like that plays a part, the fact that certain issues aren't, it's not as people expect them to be seen because of what they've seen on TV or like film. So just kind of correcting for that and educating people on that, it will definitely be helpful, because then, yeah.
So you talked about educating,
Yeah.
and so you've talked a little bit about how kind of seeing this human aspect to your parents and to yourself was something that was like really important in bridging this gap in regards to education about what you were experiencing. Mm-hmm. What are other ways that we go about educating people in the community, especially when it's something that is seen as invisible and as a weakness? What are ways that you've noticed and from your experience that's effective?
So yeah, like the human element, taking people who have been successful and kind of prompting them to open up about anxiety, or not just anxiety, but other issues too. Because it's like these people, the community have already labeled as successful, right? But with that comes like this assumption that, oh, well, they're perfect in every way. But if we can peel back, and show the human elements of it, then people will be like, oh, wow, this person was successful and they deal with this other thing. So recently this week, with the unfortunate deaths of some major celebrities in the mainstream, like people are like, oh my God, like how could this happen? They were so successful. And it's just like the two aren't, mutually exclusive, right? So I just think people understanding that, just how with success, people don't understand the struggles that went behind it. People need to be aware of like the full story, I feel. Like that's important in terms of education. And then also educating people on the spectrum, you know? It's not just a binary, like either you have it or you don't. People fall in between. But the people who fall in between, because people aren't aware of the spectrum, they fall through the cracks. And instead, we should be recognizing that and helping them. So.
Yeah, you talk about the spectrum of like, there's like, what maybe is like a normal experience of life as you go through it. And then there's like increasing distress across the spectrum, and that people don't realize that at lower levels that maybe aren't like a clinically diagnosable mental health issue, that maybe then it gets overlooked and unnoticed, and that this in particular is problematic in South Asian cultures.
The dismissiveness, I feel. With my parents, I was super lucky because, you know, when I told them about it, like, yes, they were surprised, but, you know, they took the time to like think through it and kind of come meet me in the middle. But I've seen with a lot of like stories that I hear from others within the community, it's like, it's almost a dismissive, like, oh no, you're not dealing with this. Like, it's not that big of a deal, or like you're seen as like lazy or weak or just making excuses because you don't want to do X, Y, and Z. So like the dismissiveness, I feel like, needs to stop, obviously. But that's easier said than done. I think with that comes like a sense of empathy and education, and then other aspects that impede having people be educated about the spectrum is that honestly maybe they just don't know what to look for. Like anxiety in like a mental health perspective might just be seen as, oh, she's just nervous about a test, it's not a big deal, or like she's overreacting. So really listening to people, and you know, you have to talk to them to understand like the depth at which they're dealing with this emotion, right? And then from that you can discern whether it's like just normal test anxiety or there's something like deeper. And if there's something deeper, then like getting them to like talk about it and things like that. Like so time, I think, is a major thing. Like I said earlier, with a lot of South Asian families, it's like there's so many other pressing issues that these kind of talks fall by the wayside. But I think that's the biggest thing, like the time and like giving it the respect that it needs, and talking about it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sitting with me today and talking about these really incredibly important and salient issues that, as you've mentioned, really aren't talked about enough in the South Asian community.
Yeah,
I appreciate your personal perspective and everything that you've experienced. Thank you for sharing it with us.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me.
Hi, my name is Jay Gandhi, and I am a psychiatrist that works with the American Psychiatric Association. Thank you so much for watching this interview. If you or a loved one is experiencing a time of mental stress, please check the resources listed below in the comments.